There's a general consensus that the first Hydlide is one of the worst games ever made. Fortunately, its Sega Genesis sequel, Super Hydlide, is a whole lot better, but also much stranger. I'd go so far as to say it's one of the weirdest RPGs I've ever played, especially if you got to the ending, which is pretty shocking. But let's talk a bit about the game first, and warning, there's a bunch of story spoilers throughout. I still remember how I got my copy. I was a kid at the game store and had the choice of purchasing any new game I wanted, as long as it was under $30. There were two games that looked like they could last me at least half a year, since I knew I wasn't going to get anything new before then. Fatal Labyrinth and Super Hydlide, which were both $29.99. I kept on going back and forth, and eventually I settled on Super Hydlide because I somehow figured out it was an actual RPG versus Fatal Labyrinth, which was a roguelike. Super Hydlide was a remake of a 1987 MSX title and came out on the Sega Genesis in North America in 1990. Its original name, Hydlide 3: The Space Memories, is pretty important to understanding its story, but we'll get back to that later. I'll be honest, initially, I was very disappointed by the game. As an action RPG, the graphics weren't great, and the character sprites were tiny, especially compared to the bright visuals of other RPGs I liked at the time like Phantasy Star 2. I was also frustrated by many of its gameplay decisions that make the early game a difficult grind. You have to eat regularly or you'll lose health wherever you are. As there's a day-night cycle, you need to sleep on time or you become tired, and your attacks no longer affect enemies. If you carry out immoral acts by killing good monsters, people won't even talk to you anymore. If you buy too many items, your weight will prevent you from moving, so you have to carefully consider every purchase. Most of the opening of the game revolves around you micromanaging the details of your life and powering up your hero. That includes figuring out whether to use experience points to buy spells or to level up, both of which are important and really should have been tied to separate currencies. It's almost like someone got it in their mind, let's make it as hard as possible to enjoy the game. Looking back, the choice I had to make seemed like picking your poison. I know it's never a bad thing getting to buy a game, but during those first few days with Super Hydlide, I wondered an awful lot about Fatal Labyrinth. Now that I've played Fatal Labyrinth, I know it isn't a bad game, but definitely not what I was looking for. It has light RPG elements and even an opening town, but once you enter the labyrinth, it's a straight up dungeon crawl with almost no world building or story. Again, as long as you know what you're getting, it works, but what I wanted was a deeper story. So I am glad I made the choice I did, especially because something unexpected happened. Super Hydlide grew on me, and I actually started enjoying playing it. Certain items you acquire do help out, like the money changer, which lets you switch your coins so they weigh less. You can also literally speed time up, which is super helpful. Again, this seems at first like a nifty gameplay option, meant to work around weight gain since they slow you down so much, but there's a purpose behind this too. Fortunately, combat isn't bad, though it's simplistic. The enemies lack almost any personality, the variety of them do make for a quirky experience. There is something fun in the game that lets you fight both vampires and futuristic robots. I do kind of wish the enemies better resemble their cool concept art, like killer cannibal plants, zombies, and wraiths. Equipment upgrades are visually reflected on the character, and the overall game loop becomes much more manageable as you progress and gain levels and money. You can choose among 4 starting classes, with the warrior being the best all around. I picked the priest as they can use all 12 spells, and the manual describes the character as having the greatest potential for growth. The best part is the music, which is fantastic. There's an area nearby the starting village where you can play a sound test, and most of the beats are really good. Super Hydlide makes a terrible first, second, and third impression. But if you give it a chance, which I know is a hard ask in this day and age when there's so much awesome content available, it makes for a unique experience that's worth trying out. I wasn't expecting much from the story, but I was pleasantly surprised to discover I was wrong. The narrative revolves around a giant fire that erupted in the middle of fairyland, causing a massive hole to appear. Since then, floods have destroyed entire villages and famine is drying up what were once beautiful pastures. Monsters are everywhere, causing havoc. You're chosen to investigate what's going on, but some of those in charge question if they made the right choice in picking you. That's why many of the NPCs won't even talk to you unless you've proven yourself throughout the game. The game is full of obscure puzzles, the Simon's Quest type that make you scratch your head and wonder how in the world you were supposed to figure it out. But if you stick with it, I promise you the game gets stranger. Like in the Water Palace, this king likes collecting all sorts of random and eccentric stuff. He even has a Sega cartridge. But now he wants a Dragon Fang, and the only way to get it is to hunt down a dragon. This dragon is chilling underneath the subterranean village, but the guard won't let you into the warehouse. It took me a while to figure out there's an invisible wall you have to go through, and then there's a random treasure chest you have to check twice before it lets you down. I finally found the dragon, but I felt conflicted. He never bothered anyone, and never caused any trouble. But here you are, encroaching on his lair to take his fangs, so some king can show off and feel good about himself. After defeating the dragon, I returned to the palace to give the king the fang. In exchange, the king lets you into his treasury so you can acquire Jeem's scroll. Inside, there's just a bunch of junk he's hoarded. The whole world is in disarray, and this kingdom cut itself off from the rest of it so the king can play with his trinkets. For a game that emphasizes morality, this whole quest felt like the immoral thing to do. Your adventure also takes you to the heavens as you climb the Havel Tower, activate the elevator, and climb 200 floors to fight Hellsmoke, a giant ball made of hellish smoke. I wish this battle involved a little more strategy than just stabbing it as quickly as possible. You can fall off the edge if you're not careful, but otherwise, as long as you're leveled up, it should be a straightforward battle. You acquire the Cloudstone that lets you walk on clouds and visit the Heavenly City. Whereas everyone on the surface is in a panic, high up in the skies, everyone here is happy, indifferent to what's going on at the surface. Even though their tower was disconnected, no one seems to care. You can buy more powerful spells here, but there are also two items here that really improve combat. The first is the Warrior Stone that increases your attack and also gives you an auto attack. The second is the strongest blade in the game, the Lightsaber. It's hidden in a corner of the Heavenly Castle as long as you're holding the very heavy silver sword, which you have to lug around after finding in a cemetery. After you gain these, you become a lethal force, and combat isn't just tolerable, it's actually fun. There's something sublime about unleashing the saber and seeing enemy HP drain in a stream of destruction at your hands. The spells also make the gameplay experience much better. Illusion flips enemies around and helps you avoid them. Weight temporarily increases your maximum weight. Flash lights up an entire cave. Invincible makes your character temporarily invincible. Move is a teleport spell that lets you visit any town where you've stayed at their inn. Of the 4 classes, only the priest and monk can use all 12 spells. One thing I find amusing is that the game has a sense of humor and is full of joke items. There's even a woman named Yuko who tells you you're not strong enough to go out with her. On a more serious note, some of the villagers mention an ancient race called Sarah that was technologically advanced, but they're no longer around and are instead in a submerged palace. You find this palace with the scroll that summons the castle from a lake, and find a cybertech madhouse within. The hardest part isn't the stream of enemies, but little areas where you can get stuck. It would sometimes take more than a minute to get loose, which was really frustrating. When you finally get to their command center, the people of Sarah who built the submerged palace reveal in their memory banks that they escaped the world and hid away in space after a being called Kaizak tried to turn them into monsters. During their excavation, they unleashed a huge fire, explaining what started the events of the game. And the next part is pretty amusing in that you find the fissure and jump in with your spacesuit on, only to find yourself in space. As an aside, I'm fascinated by all the recent UAP news, and I find it interesting to hear people's speculations that maybe UAPs actually originated from either underwater or inside the planet, rather than from space. Super Hydlide was a few steps ahead of them by putting space inside the planet. You walk among the stars and it's actually a huge area. You need a space compass to show you the general direction. From what I understand, the map stays the same but your starting point is randomized. After searching for a while, there's a surreal moment when you finally find the spaceship. Is this what the people of Sarah had built? You enter and find it's been overrun by robots and monsters. You see these bird-like creatures with earphones on, and when you find a computer log, it reveals all the people of Sarah were turned into monsters. Those bird creatures were the Sarah. And it hit me, it wasn't just the Sarah. All those good monsters out around Fairyland were also humans who'd been transformed. The whole world is falling apart. Kaizak is causing all this trouble, but who is he? To get to him, you need to take down the main villain from the first Hydlide, Varylus. But to get to him, you have to travel to the Land of Illusion and find holy water to break the seal that imprisoned him. I appreciate that the game continually throws surprises like this where you find a whole new area to explore. Even if there's not actually that much to do there, it's still interesting to see this land that exists between Kaizak's other dimension and Fairyland. There's also dark undertones in the city where most people refuse to speak to you, and there's a jail full of prisoners, with most of them claiming they're innocent and want to get out. What kind of place was the City of Illusion? You need to buy the holy water, break the seal that's holding Varylus, and track him down. When you fight him, you find out how he keeps coming back even after defeating him in previous Hydlide games. He has regenerative abilities. They've given a gameplay explanation for his ability to come back for 3 games, but this time he's only a sub-villain. You vanquish him once and for all so you can get a statue, which is the key to Kaizak, who's waiting in another dimension. You enter the domain, save a fairy who lets you see Kaizak, then confront him in a climactic battle. He's by far the most difficult enemy in the game, and I died a whole bunch of times. The only way to defeat him is to have a weapon that shoots projectiles, and to take out the bumps behind him, immobilizing him. At that point he's no longer vulnerable to your attacks. The only way to defeat him is to let him swallow you whole, then shoot him from inside his belly to kill him. It's a weird and memorable fight, and I wish more of the boss battles were like this. After his defeat, he reveals a shocking truth. He created the universe. Once he dies, all of Fairyland will disappear. His big mistake was creating you, who was meant to be his adversary. Remember how you can manipulate time? That's part of your power. As he dies, the universe turns to darkness, but this is where the title for the original comes into play. The fairy reminds you that you can bring the universe back if you draw on your memories. The whole journey was meant to teach you how to be human. Food, sleeping, dealing with weird personalities, all those little details were part of it. As the final cutscene ends, you recreated the universe according to your memories and desires. So what is the universe like? After completing the game, the save file updates with the newly recreated universe. You wander it and find it completely barren. The post-apocalyptic fields have no sign of life. Then you enter the towns. NPCs are there. But when you talk to them, the only thing they say is congratulations. Talk to every NPC in every town, and that's all they say. You sap them of any free will, of any individuality. Now they all worship you with congratulations, 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 congratulations. You've created a dystopia where everyone lives solely to congratulate you, oblivious to anything else. Had Kaizak once been a hero like you, twisted and mutated over time? Had his memories been his enemy? I'm not sure, but somehow the space memories have become a space nightmare.